On today's episode of The Garrison, we are looking at a list of questions that I have for non-Christians.
We live in a world where there is more access to information than ever before. Generations, young and old, are being exposed to radically different ideologies and opinions every day. It can be so overwhelming, trying to decipher what's true and what's false. But there is a way. Join me as we discuss some of the toughest questions out there about Christianity, the Bible, and culture. I'm your host, Nick Lackey. Welcome to The Garrison.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Garrison. Thanks for joining me today. And today's episode is going to look a little bit different than what they normally look like, because I think normally what we do is we will take a topic or a question that people have about Christianity and talk about it for about 20 or 30 minutes. But today what I've done is I've prepared a list of questions that I have for non-Christians. And these are questions which are really important when we're talking about the origin of life, our meaning and our purpose and our morality and our destiny as well. And so when I ask these questions, forgive me if they sound like I'm asking what I would call a gotcha question, right? Where it might sound a little bit arrogant, like I'm expecting that there is no answer. So forgive me if they sound like that. I don't intend them to be like that. I genuinely think these are important questions that if there are answers from a non-Christian perspective, I'd love to hear them. So far, I haven't really heard a compelling answer, but if there are answers out there, I'm open and I'm willing to hear them. Otherwise, we will get into it very shortly. And so the other thing we need to know when we are asking these questions is I am going to be assuming that Christianity isn't true. Okay, so let's say Christianity isn't true. Therefore, and then I've got this list of questions here. So we're going to start off with the origin question. I guess, where did we come from? So question one, what caused us to begin? Where did the first life come from, or has it always been here? Number two, if all species evolved from the same first life, why are humans so much more advanced than other animals? If macroevolution is true, that's the belief that, Christians believe in microevolution, but macroevolution is where there is large-scale adaptations and there is a change of kind. For example, from feline to canine, two different types of animals, not just speciation. Okay, so if macroevolution is true, what evidence is there? What bit of observable evidence is there for macroevolution? Now, let's assume that macroevolution is true. Here are some more questions. Where did the space for the universe come from? Where did matter come from? Where did the laws of the universe come from? These are the laws of gravity and the laws of inertia. How did matter get so perfectly organized? Where did the energy come from to do all of the organizing? When, where, why, and how did life come from dead matter? When, where, why, and how did life learn to reproduce itself? With what did the first cell capable of sexual reproduction reproduce? Why would any plant or animal want to reproduce more of its kind, since this would only make more mouths to feed and decrease the chances of survival? Does the individual or the species have a drive to survive? How do you explain this? How can mutations, the recombining of genetic code, create any new improved varieties? For example, recombining English letters will never produce Chinese books. Is it possible that similarities in design between different animals prove a common creator rather than a common ancestor? Natural selection works only with the genetic information available and tends to only keep a species stable. How would you explain the increasing complexity of the genetic code that must have occurred if evolution were true? When, where, why, and how did single-celled plants become multi-celled? Where are the 2- and 3-celled intermediates? Where did the single-celled organisms evolve? When, where, why, and how did fish change to amphibians? Reptiles change to birds? The lungs, bones, eyes, reproductive organs, heart, method of locomotion, body covering, etc. are all very different. How did the intermediate forms live? Number 14, for the questions for evolutionists. When, where, why, how, and from what did whales evolve? Seahorses evolved? Bats evolved? Eyes evolve? Ears evolve? Hair, skin, feathers, scales, nails, claws, etc. When, where, how, and why did they all evolve? Which evolved first? How and how long did it work without the others? Number 1, the digestive system, the food to be digested, the appetite, the ability to find and eat the food, the digestive juices, or the body's resistance to its own digestive juice, the stomach and the intestines, etc. Number 2, which evolved first? The drive to reproduce or the ability to reproduce? Number 3, was it the lungs, the mucus lining to protect them, the throat, or the perfect mixture of gases to be breathed into the lungs? Number 4, the termite or the flagella in its intestines that actually digest the cellulose it consumes. Number 5, DNA or RNA to carry the DNA message to cell parts. Number 6, the plants or the insects that live on and pollinate the plants. Number 7, the bones, ligaments, tendons, blood supply, or muscles to move the bones. Number 8, the nervous system, repair system, or hormone system. And number 9, the immune system or the need for an immune system. Now that's the end of our questions for evolutionists, or the questions for those who believe that there is no divine creator or designer of the universe. And that last section in particular is talking about something we have mentioned on the Garrison before, which is called irreducible complexity. In other words, there are certain parts of our body and every species' body which must have evolved all together in order for them to have made sense. A very simple example of this is our heart. All right, in our circulatory system, we've got a heart. This is a very simple overview of it. We've got a heart, our veins, and our blood. Which one of them evolved first? And if we only had our blood, what would be the point of it without a heart or without veins? Or if we only had a heart, what would be the point of it without blood and veins? Or if we only had veins, what would be the point of it without our heart and our blood? No, these things must have evolved, if evolution is true, all together through a random mutation, which is very, very highly unlikely, to the point where I'd say you require more blind faith in believing that than you would to believe the evidence for Christianity, because Christianity is not a religion where we have blind faith. No, it's where we have faith in the evidence. All right, so that's the end of our overarching question 1, right? The origin of life. Those are a lot of questions that I've yet to hear a good answer for, except for the Christian answer. But if there is an answer out there, please let me know. I'm willing to listen. Number 2, where did morality come from? Why do humans set up courts, but monkeys don't? If we've all evolved from the same original common ancestor, then why do humans in particular have such a sense of morality, whereas animals and basically every other species out there don't? They don't set up court systems. Is all morality subjective, in which case it's up to the individual? If so, why should we punish individuals for doing what was right in their own eyes? Why should we punish someone who's murdered someone if they thought that that was the morally right thing to do? It's just your opinion versus their opinion, is it? Number 3, why do we feel guilt for doing wrong and we feel a sense of reward for doing well? Why do we naturally feel that? If morality is determined by society, if a whole society thought that murdering Jews in concentration camps was okay, would that truly be okay if the society determined it? Or if morality is determined by our evolutionary drive to survive, what's stopping me from stealing from someone else to increase my chances of survival? Again, I'm just trying to find where morality actually comes from, if in fact it does exist. Who defined the word good and evil, and on what authority did they do so? Why do societies built on Judeo-Christian beliefs tend to do better economically and have a higher life expectancy? Is that a coincidence? What life is more important to protect, a fly or a human being? And think about this one. You'd probably naturally say a human being. But why? What gives us human beings a more value than a fly? If we punish humans for murdering each other, shouldn't we punish humans for murdering insects? Or does human life have a greater value? If so, why? What's worse, one person dying in a car crash or an entire school bus? Why? Is it because life does have value? In which case, where does our value get derived from? If there's nothing after we die, and no one will be judged for their actions, why try to be kind to the poor? Why give to charities? On what standard do we make these judgments? These are all questions I have around the morality of someone who doesn't believe in a moral lawgiver. If there is no God, there is no moral lawgiver, there is no morality, and it's all subjective. So these questions do beg an answer that I believe only Christianity can give. Number 3, what is our purpose? So we've gone from origin to morality. Number 3, what is our purpose, right? What is the purpose of our life on earth? Is there an objective purpose, or is it every man for himself, you make up your own purpose kind of thing? According to who do we get our purpose? Now, why do human beings feel a sense of accomplishment when we do hard things? Why does anything really matter in the long term? You know, when you go and just go for a big run, or maybe you complete a marathon, or you complete a hard exam, or anything in life which is hard and you overcome that obstacle, why do you feel a sense of accomplishment? Alright, so that's our purpose, number 3. That was a shorter one. Number 4, this one's short as well, but how do we disprove the resurrection of Jesus? Now, obviously the burden of proof for someone who claims the resurrection happened is on them if they make that statement. And Christians have provided a whole lot of evidence for the resurrection. Okay, so first of all, before we dive right into the resurrection, why do we assume that miracles are impossible? After all, the biggest supernatural event was the creation of the universe. Whether you're a Christian or not, it was a supernatural event. If you're a Christian, then you believe that it was the supernatural God which caused it. Or if you're an atheist, then you believe that nothing caused it. That's even more, I'd say, ridiculous, but moving on. Is there really a natural explanation for absolutely everything? Can we explain everything through natural means? If so, can the resurrection of Jesus be explained naturally? Now here you might say, well, yeah, naturally, he never actually died, so therefore he never rose from the dead because he was never dead. Or maybe you say he died, but he never actually rose from the dead. That's your natural explanation. But how do we disprove the supernatural event that Christians claim is true in spite of all the evidence? If you want more evidence, go to see episode 12 of the Garrison podcast, where we go into depth about the resurrection of Jesus. But how do we disprove this event? You know, Christians are claiming that there's all this evidence out there. We've got historical evidence that Jesus did truly die, historical evidence that he did truly rise from the dead. He appeared to over 500 people after he rose again from the dead. There is a whole lot of evidence that he did truly rise again from the dead. So how do we disprove it? What is the natural explanation for all of this evidence? Is there some angle that we haven't really looked at that gives us a good, compelling answer? So that's the resurrection. And number 5, our last topic where I have a list of questions, is what is our destiny? So first question, if there's nothing after we die, then why not end it all when life gets tough? You aren't going to feel anything, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that if you don't believe in God, then you should go end it all. But logically, if there's nothing after we die, and life on earth is a bit tough sometimes, and it's a bit rough, and if someone's genuinely not enjoying it, that every day is pain for them, then why not end it all when life gets tough? And that's probably the reality of a lot of tragic suicides, is that people have no hope. They think that it's a quick way out of all the pain and suffering on this world. But honestly, if there's no God, there's no afterlife, there's no destiny, then it makes sense logically. It's very tragic. And I wish it upon no one that they would be like this or think like this. And I want everybody to know that there is a hope that we can be saved from our sin. And there is 100% an afterlife. There is an eternity after we die. All right, moving on. Did you and a fungus gnat have the same destiny? If you don't know what a fungus gnat is, I unfortunately learned what they were earlier this year when I think I overwatered my houseplants, and man, they're annoying. But do you and a fungus gnat have the same destiny? A fungus gnat, they're little flies that set up camp in your houseplants. Now, I wish fungus gnats got punished after they died for being really annoying, but honestly, do you and a fungus gnat have the same destiny? Is that what you believe, that there's both nothingness after you die? Does it seem fair that Hitler never faced any real justice for his crimes on this earth? If there is no afterlife, if there is no destiny, then Hitler will receive the same destiny than someone who you might say is a really good person. Now, with the amount of injustice in this world, wouldn't it make sense that if there was a God, he would bring justice to every situation through his judgment? Now, that wraps up the list of questions that I have for non-Christians, and that was talking about destiny at the end. And now there's a massive array of questions that need to be answered in a way which would go against Christianity to be sure that we can rule out the Christian God. I just want people to think about this more. That's the purpose of this episode. I want people who aren't professing Christians to be thinking about these issues more, because there's nothing more important than your eternal destiny. You may not believe in heaven and hell right now, but I 100% do. And if it is real, there's nothing more important than finding out where you're going to go. And you do not want to go to hell. We've done a podcast on that as well, how horrible it's going to be. And I've said this before on the Garrison, but the most important question that you have to figure out is God real? And if you come to the conclusion that he is, what are you going to do about it? As a Christian, I believe that, if you come to the conclusion that God is real, then you have to admit that God has a moral standard that we have all broken. His 10 commandments. If you've ever lied, stolen, looked with lust, dishonored your parents, blasphemed, then you've broken God's law. And ultimately, you don't deserve to be rewarded for that. I don't deserve to be rewarded for that. We deserve justice, and justice is hell, is punishment for our crimes. Just as if someone breaks the law on this earth, justice is for them is to pay a fine. And the fine for our sin is death and hell. But thanks to the goodness of God, thanks to his loving kindness, he sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for us, that if we repent of our sin and put our faith in him, we will be saved. And that's the good news of Christianity. And so that's the end of today's episode of The Garrison. I really want you to think about this stuff, particularly if you're a non-Christian. If you're a Christian and you've just listened, these are some great questions to be asking people to get them to think about these big issues. So if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it around with people if you benefited from it, or to rate it on wherever you are listening. So thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of The Garrison.